Hello, and welcome to Leaving Academia, Becoming a Freelance Editor. I'm your host, Paulina Cossette. I was recently chosen as a featured member in the Facebook group Academics Say Goodbye. If you're not familiar with the group, it's a really fantastic community of people who are thinking of leaving academia and those who have already left. People ask questions, exchange job information and opportunities, and generally support each other during this very difficult transition. Having left the academy and started a successful business, the group's administrator asked me and several other members to each write a post sharing our story and several pieces of advice for the group members who are thinking about leaving. My post got some great feedback, so I thought I'd share it as a podcast episode here. In this episode, I'll tell you the brief version of my story of leaving academia and starting an academic editing business. If you want the full story, head to episode 1 of this podcast. I also share 5 tips for those who are considering leaving, but who are afraid to take the leap. By the way, this fear is totally understandable. I experienced it very intensely myself. So without further ado, here's my story and my advice. Welcome to Leaving Academia, Becoming a Freelance Editor, the podcast. I'm your host, Paulina Cossette. In 2019, I was a political science professor who was fed up with the stress and hostility of academia, not to mention the low pay. I left my tenure-track job and went from barely surviving to thriving as a freelance academic editor. Today, I own Acadia Editing Services, an editing and coaching business that brings in 6 figures a year. In this podcast, I'll discuss the challenges of academia, what academic editing involves, and what life as a freelancer looks like. If you're willing to jump outside your comfort zone, it is possible to find joy, true flexibility, and a profitable and rewarding career as an academic editor. Thanks for listening. Welcome to Leaving Academia, Becoming a Freelance Editor. As I mentioned in the intro, I'll be sharing my story of leaving academia and becoming an editor, as well as 5 tips and things for you to consider if you're thinking about taking the leap yourself. I'm a former U.S. politics professor who burned out and left academia in 2019. I had no idea what I was going to do, but I knew that I couldn't go back to teaching. After applying to numerous non-academic jobs and repeatedly being told that I was overqualified, I decided that I would try freelance copy editing. I had no idea that copy editors existed until I published my book with Routledge and worked with one of their freelancers before the book went to print. I contacted their offices, applied, and was hired. I spent months searching online for gigs that paid better, but I was still able to earn around $45,000 US during my first year, while working only about 20 hours a week. I did have a toddler at home, after all. One thing led to another, and in late 2022, I set out to attract my own private clients, mostly faculty and grad students. I copy edit everything from dissertations to job market letters to tenure packets and books. In July 2024, I launched my course and group coaching program, Becoming an Academic Editor, which teaches burned out scholars and faculty how to become an editor or coach. If you're curious about this, go to acadiaediting.com/become an editor. As a first-generation college student raised by a single mom, I'm very proud to say that in 2024, I earned 6 figures for the first time ever. I definitely would not be making this kind of money if I had stayed in academia. And I am far less stressed out and anxious than I used to be. I also work just 30 hours a week and take several weeks of vacation each year. During that time off, I don't do any work, and I don't feel guilty at all about that. Life outside of academia truly is very different from when you're a professor or a postdoc or even a grad student. And being a business owner means that you're your own boss. You can work whenever and from wherever you want. If you'd like to hear more of my story, head to episode 1 of this podcast. Next, I'll share my advice for anyone considering leaving academia or going into editing or coaching. Number 1, just do it. If you're listening to this podcast, it's likely because you've either already left academia, yay for you, or because you're still there and you're unhappy at best and miserable at worst. I vividly remember the feeling of dread and the chronic stomach churn that I experienced when I was debating whether or not to leave. And this was in 2019, before higher ed in the United States became a complete dumpster fire. Let's be real. Academia isn't going to get better anytime soon. If you're unhappy now, it's likely only going to get worse. Seek out books like Annie Duke's Quit to help you make a plan to leave, and then go for it. There is so much joy to be gained outside the academy, not to mention flexibility and potentially a higher income. Number 2, stop believing the myths that academia perpetuates to make you believe that you're unworthy and helpless. This is the biggest lie sold to us, and it infuriates me. I work for weeks with members of my program, Becoming an Academic Editor, to help them realize that they are talented, that they do have skills that are valuable outside the academy, and that they do deserve to be paid well. There's no more free labor here, folks. Academia breaks you down and makes you think that you're worthless. It's like Stockholm Syndrome and an abusive relationship. Stop believing the lies and seek out objective information about non-academic jobs or businesses from people who've left the academy and found success elsewhere. LinkedIn is a great place for you to connect with people and ask them these questions. And I've found that former academics are always happy to talk with you to help you get out if that's what you're seeking to do. Number 3, speaking of lies, I'm sorry, but academic jobs are not flexible. I'm sure you've seen the memes that say that academia is so flexible. You work 18 hours a day, but you get to choose which of those 18 hours you want to work. There is nothing more flexible than owning your own business and being your own boss. Instead of being beholden to abusive administrators and students, you get to set and hold boundaries for yourself based on what you want your life to look like. It doesn't get better than that. Number 4, I think my favorite part about leaving academia, aside from being able to spend more time with my kids and being way less stressed, is that the guilt is gone. When I was still teaching, I spent every vacation trying to catch up on research and writing and feeling tremendously guilty if I took time off to be with my family instead. What a crock! That is not how we're supposed to live our lives. You're supposed to enjoy life. Your job, yes, but especially the time you spend with your loved ones. Capitalism has taught us to prioritize work, and all it's done is create extreme burnout and misery. Finally, number 5, if you're interested in becoming an editor or coach or starting any type of business, it's not nearly as scary as you think. There are very few startup costs, and you get to craft the business to look and operate however, wherever, and whenever you want. Yes, if you're doing this full time, you have to hustle a bit to attract clients. But you can learn how to do this. You're smart, persistent, and creative. You had to be to finish graduate school and get an academic job. And every minute of work and every ounce of energy that you put into your business is spent for you, not some abusive administrator or ungrateful student. You work hard, but you get it all back in spades. Anyway, I hope this helps. If you're curious about academic editing or coaching, please get in touch. I'm always happy to chat with you. And if you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to my YouTube channel, give the episode a 5-star rating and quick review on your podcast app, and most importantly, share it with a friend who needs to hear it. See you next week. If you're unhappy in academia and you think you might be a good editor or writing coach, check out my course, Becoming an Academic Editor. This digital course is paired with a 12-week group coaching program to support you through your decision to leave academia or not, and to start building a profitable and rewarding academic editing business. Learn more by going to acadiaediting.com/become an editor. Thanks again for listening. I'll see you next time.